Inverse of square root function. Here we have a very interesting question. It says find inverse of y equals to minus square root of x minus 3. Now if you adopt the standard rules of following the inverse, first step is to write x as y, rather swap x and y, and then solve for y, right? So let us swap x and y, right? And then the next step is solve for y, right? So this is how we find inverse, right? For inverse, correct? So that is how we find inverse. So let's do that. So the question is y equals to minus square root of x minus 3. So let's swap. We will write this as x equals to minus square root of y minus 3. Now we need to solve for y. That means we need to square both sides, right? Since this is in square root. Now if you square both sides, this negative becomes positive. So what you really get is x squared equals 2. Now since this becomes positive, we get y minus 3, right? Now that is a right step in a way, but it creates error. It creates error because let us say if you have minus 7 and if you square it, then you get 49 plus. But square root of 49 plus is just plus 7, not minus 7. I hope you understand. So that is what makes this question very difficult. Now, how to avoid this error? Now the problem is how to avoid it. That is a big question, right? So it's an exciting question which we have been always trying to figure out. One way is to remember that the domain and range of inverse function flips. So it's a good idea to find domain and range of your function, right? Y equals to minus square root of x minus 3. So let's do that. So what we will do now is we'll go back to the function itself, which is y equals to minus square root of x minus 3, right? Now let's try to sketch this function and figure out its domain and range. Now x minus 3 means square root function is moved 3 units to right, and this minus means it is reflected on x-axis. So basically this function should be kind of like this, right? So that is how this function should look like. We are talking about y equals to minus square root of this. Now from here you can see this point is 3, right? Now from here we can see that domain is x belongs to real numbers where x is greater than equal to 3, and the range is y belongs to real numbers where y is less than equal to 0. Do you see that? Now when we are talking about inverse functions, that is our function, right? Then these will flip, right? So they will flip. Now we're talking about inverse function. So that is the function y equals to this. Now when we talk about inverse function, the domain and range should flip. So what we are expecting here is that the domain of the function should be x belongs to real number where x is less than equal to 0, right? And range is y belongs to real number where y is greater than equal to 3. So that is what happens to domain and range when you try to find inverse of a function, right? Now this helps to avoid the error. So how to avoid the error is to consider domain and range, right? So that helps. Do you understand? You can of course solve for y from here, and you can write what is y equals to. So we'll say y is equals to x squared plus 3, right? You'll get this. And then you'll write, well, the inverse of this function, which is not indeed a real true answer, but we'll write for the time being, inverse of the function is x squared plus 3. So we get that answer. But remember, this inverse should have a domain of x less than equals to 0. Now that means we have to put a restriction on this function. So we'll say where x is less than equals to 0. Now it becomes a true inverse. Do you understand? Where x is less than equals to 0. Then it becomes an inverse function. So that is how we can correct the error which was incorporated when we squared the function. So it's kind of very important to understand that we have to put a restriction. So if you see now the solution, f inverse is x squared plus 3. If you don't put this restriction, then basically you are showing that that is your inverse, correct? But truly speaking, the inverse is only the left part, not this part. So here you see your x values are restricted. They are less than equal to 0. This is what is kind of important. And that is the inverse of your function, right? So this is f inverse of the given function. Do you understand? If this is fx, then that is the f inverse of the function, correct? That is what I want to highlight with the help of this video. I hope you appreciate now. Let's go back to the question. It says find inverse of y equals to minus square root of x minus 3. In such a case, we should first find domain and range. So first step is look into the function, right? That is step number 1. The very function is minus square root of x. It has a domain where x is belonging to real numbers and is greater than or equal to 3. Range is belonging to real numbers but less than or equals to 0. Its inverse should have a domain where x is less than or equal to 0 and the range is greater than or equal to 3. That's kind of important. And therefore, when you swap and rewrite your function as x equals to minus square root of y minus 3, you should also include where x is less than or equal to 0. Do you understand? This is what is critical. And then if you continue by placing this condition that x is less than or equals to 0, then you get the right answer, right? So that is a condition where you should incorporate, and then you get your answer, and the answer is x squared plus 3, where x is less than or equals to 0. Do you see that? So that is how we need to solve this question. And I hope you understand the strategy, how we went about this. Have a good look at it, and I hope it helps to understand. Thank you, and all the best.